Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of Enabling and Customer Services. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be made available for viewing through our Council's website. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you are not addressing the meeting. Writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. If you are in the hall, you can do this on your iPhone or iPad. Please don't repeat contributions already made by other members. No material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting, please leave the Teams meeting for the period of time or write leave in the Teams chat function, and then join when you rejoin the meeting, so we can keep track on whether the meeting is quorate or not. All members should speak clearly and directly into the microphone when making contributions, and when referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. We have several important reports to consider today, and I anticipate we will deal with the business in our usual efficient manner. Item 1, sedent and apologies. Mr. Evans, can you provide the sedent and any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we have 8 members present in the hall, with 10 present on Microsoft Teams, 2 members not present at the start of the meeting, being Councillors Giusti and Malcolm Johnston. No apologies, Chair. Thank you.
I think Councillor Johnston will be an apology. My understanding is in St Andrews in a pensions meeting. I approve of members' remote participation. Any members have any declarations of interest or statements of connection they wish to make? Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, item 5, taxi and wheelchair accessible vehicles. I've got a brother that's a taxi operator, so I'll be declaring an interest.
Don't see any other hands up or anybody online. Move on to item 3, minutes of previous meeting of 11th of February 2025. Can we approve the minutes of this meeting held on 11th of February? I take silence as agreement. Right. Move on to item 4, which is prevention of sexual harassment policy. Members are presented with a proposed prevention of sexual harassment policy as part of the Council's commitment to provide an inclusive, supportive and safe environment to work. The policy has been developed working with joint trade unions. The policy and associated procedures should also ensure that the Council is able to meet its obligations under the Worker Protection Act, with new requirements being introduced over the coming years. Mr. Clanahan is here to assist if members have any questions. I will open up to any questions. Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Thank you for the report. No questions as such. Well, maybe one small question, but just would like to say that certainly the Labour Group absolutely commend this report and the Council's proactive approach. Can't overstate how much this is needed in the workplace and absolutely the right thing to do. We do note that the catalyst for this was the UK Government Employment Rights Bill, which is on the side of working people and will strengthen workplace harassment laws, which is really, really useful. I think I, like almost every woman, or probably every woman, have personal experience of working in organisations where sexual harassment was rife. This is historical for me and drove institutional sexism, which was apparent with regard to hiring, promotional and compensation practices. Not that that's the case now in the organisations that I worked for, but it was. But I think that it isn't just about women, and the good thing about this is that it covers all genders and all sexes in terms of harassment, because it can happen to everybody. What we do, again, commend is that great examples of inclusive statements, the appendix, 2.1. Hang on, page 26, examples of inclusive statements. Anyone can be the victim of sexual harassment, and that's really true. I think that should be emphasised for everybody. And 2.1, page 27, for examples of sexual harassment, again, which is really good if folk don't know, which they should know, but if they don't know, the examples are there for people. And the other thing we like to commend is at 3.2, page 29, senior leadership champions and are there, and appropriate and targeted training for all is also included, and it will be part of staff's induction. So no complaints, no issues, just very much commend the policy, and thank you for doing it. Oh, the question I had, sorry, I forgot about that, I was on a bit of a rant there, was what was there before? What was the predecessor of this policy? Thank you.
Mr Callaghan.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Yes, we had we have a number of policies, wide range of policies that made reference to preventing sexual harassment. So it was very much part of our policy suite. And I think before the legislation came in, we were actually having really supportive conversations with our trade unions about bringing forward a standalone sexual harassment policy, which happened to coincide with the new legislation. But we were on that journey anyway. But prior to that, it was certainly embedded within other policies. But I think, as has already been mentioned, the standalone policy certainly sets the tone for the future. Thank you.
Councillor Dashba.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, no, commend the policy, absolutely. My question's about the Equally Safe at Work accreditation programme. I'm aware that it's a tiered system, so it goes from bronze up to gold, etc. Can we just get some clarity about how far the council is going to be going on this? Are we going for gold? Thank you.
Mr Callaghan.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Yes, we absolutely will. And we've got a good record of national accreditation programmes. And most employers would normally feed into the lower levels as they develop and improve the position relative to the particular programme. So we will be setting out to achieve that bronze status, but we'll very much bring back updates as to how we're doing with that, and also looking at the accreditation for silver and gold as we seek to achieve the top accreditation, because ultimately it's not necessarily about the accreditation, it's really about the work and the developments and the improvements to get there, and we very much buy into that, and that's why we've joined that very important programme. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So it's just on what elected members will be able to see in terms of the rollout of this policy, which obviously is welcome. It says in the first sort of page of the report, page 15, just about the 29% of those employed reporting having experienced some form of sexual harassment in their workplace. I mean, I've no idea, literally no idea what that looks like for Dumfries and Galloway Council, and I would hope it wasn't that, but I mean, I think it would be helpful if we knew, well, to what extent is this an issue, and obviously this is the steps we're taking to address that and improve the culture. Even reading the detail of the report, it talks about, you know, this applies to members of staff both within work and also when they're dealing with members of the public and just in terms of service users. So I would be interested to know how we're going to record reports internally where it relates to members of the public who aren't part of the employee system, and also where it's not reported by a person who experiences it but by somebody who witnesses it. So I think it would be helpful to get that, start to get that picture, and it doesn't mention that in the way in what we're going to get reported back on when we're looking at the actual appendix. I think it's Appendix 2. It sort of has the bullet points and says we'll report on the progress of these things on page 28 and 29, but it doesn't actually go down to the level of data. And I'm just sort of wondering, does that mean we will get that data, or in what form will that come? Thank you.
Mr Callaghan, are you able to help with this? Is this something that might be picked up in item 8 as well, whereby with the member experience, I think it's a workplace experience, is this something that could be reported through that? the people experience framework measuring success. Could we maybe add something to that? Maybe James could address that at the time, but Mr. Clanahan?
Yeah, thanks for that. And in the last 12 months, we've had one case, and of course, taking these policies, important policies forward, one case is one too many. So we have what one person might argue is a low number, but someone else might argue that that's one too many. But I think it's fair to say that a challenge for all employers is the potential for underreporting. So the measures that we've put forward within the new policy framework is to create that confidence and that safety net for staff so that they can report situations, they can understand what's happening, and therefore using the procedure that we've put in place, which is already tried and tested, people will come forward more freely and easily in the future. So that's the intention. That's why we're doing this, to make sure that people feel that they can safely disclose. In terms of reporting that information, we, notwithstanding the comments of the chair, we do have our annual workforce report, which contains a huge amount of workforce data, and that workforce data will be enhanced this year in light of the new policy commitments to report on the performance of the policy, the situations, the instances and the data that we've recognised within the organisation. So we will be able to record and report that. And it's certainly one of the key measures for prevention, is making sure that we have an open and transparent reporting process. I think the last point, just around those kind of third party or public, again, we do have embedded reporting procedures within the policy framework. We also have our Ethics Point online portal where employees can report whether it's against a colleague or a member of the public. And we will then, management then will consider those complaints as and when required. So those arrangements are in place regardless of whether it's workforce or outside of workforce. Thanks, Chair.
Follow-up, Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so no, I welcome that, and I think it was really around the page 33, 8.6. So all allegations will be reported to HR. So, and I think Stuart's basically saying we will get that data coming back. I do appreciate, though, I mean, with the best will in the world, I find it remarkable that there's been one case in terms of all the thousands and thousands of staff interactions with all members of the public and other staff, which is either brilliant or we're just not getting the whole story. And I think, as Stuart's touched on there, if we've got an improved culture where people realise that they are absolutely correct to come forward and report stuff, then that's an improvement as well. So maybe we'll get a better sense of what the true picture is after this is run for a year or so. Thank you.
Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. Thanks, Stuart, for the report this morning. I think absolutely it's a crucial piece of work and vital that we take it forward, absolutely. My question is in and around the development of the policy. So page 17, 4.5 references the development team and the short life working group. Previously, it's been referenced the joint trade unions have been involved in this also. I guess my question is, was the Young Women's Network, the D&G Young Women's Network, that is really active and came and gave a fantastic presentation at the Joint Full Council, have they been involved in the development of this, and have we actually reached out to them? So that's my first question. The second point is on paragraph 4.10, the communications plan will be developed. Do we have a time frame for that, and will elected members get sight of that communication plan? Because I think it is absolutely vital, and it references in that same paragraph that we'll be getting feedback from managers. But how will we as elected members get that feedback? Is there a cycle that we'll get a report back just to get regular updates on how effective this policy is actually going to be? Thank you.
Mr. Clanahan.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Yes, the Young Women's Network have been consulted and fully involved in the policy development process. So, and any comments have been embedded within that. So that's really helpful. In terms of our comms plan, that is, we have developed that comms plan and we're ready to roll that in terms of the launch. And members will see the outputs from that, because it will become visible across our social media channels and our Gov delivery model. But happy to share at a future point, come back in terms of providing that update, in terms of not only the effectiveness of the policy, how the training is going for staff and managers through induction, but also how well our comms plan landed, and the reach for that, to make sure that as many people as possible are aware of its existence. Thank you.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Hagman?
It does, absolutely. And just once again, thank you so much for bringing this forward. I think it's absolutely a vital piece of work, so appreciate it. Thank you.
Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, it goes into detail in terms of the policy. It's welcome, the number of people that have come forward, or percentages anyway. Can I ask, just on a person coming forward, whether they'll be dealt with under the existing complaints procedure, or whether there'll be a fast track with any investigating, with being sensitive to the whole issue of what they're investigating?
Mr. Clanahan.
So, we've worked hard through our consultation process to develop the reporting procedure, so that we keep it simple for staff. We clearly articulate that within the policy framework and the procedure that's before you, so that staff are really clear in terms of if a situation happens, then they know where to go. They know where to access the support, and they know how to report that. And my advice for managers and staff out there will be to use this policy framework to report those, rather than go down any other complaints or other policy procedure that's available for them. So we want to make sure that staff have got a very easy, simple process to follow, and that we don't want to necessarily confuse it with potentially going down other processes. If employees accidentally go down other processes, then we will give advice around that to make sure that they're triaged in the right way, they get the right support, and then the correct visibility around their complaint is made through this policy framework. Thanks, Chair.
With that, there's no other hands up. I think Councillor Thompson made a good point. Are we maybe just seeing that it's been slightly underreported because people aren't confident to come forward? And hopefully this will actually give people the confidence, if they feel that they are being harassed, to actually come and make their points. We're asked here to approve under the recommendations. Are members happy to approve the Council's new Prevention of Sexual Harassment Policy, Appendix 1, and the procedures at Appendix 2? Agreed. Move on to item 5. Taxi and wheelchair accessible vehicles unmet demand survey and private hire provision. This report provides members with an updated position in respect of assessing taxi and private hire vehicle and wheelchair accessible vehicle unmet demand within the region, as agreed at full council in December 2023. We are asked to consider the key issues and recommendations highlighted through the recent survey on this matter, and consider the actions as next steps to progress further work. Ms Davidson is here to assist. If members have any questions, I will open the meeting up. Councillor Stitt.
Thanks very much, Chair. It's good to see such a comprehensive report in front of us today, from detail for paras 4.1 to 4.7, the result of a motion myself put forward and sent by Councillor Wilson. I'll not say too much on that because of other colleagues, but I'd like to make reference to page 43, para 5. I spoke to an operator in Dalbeattie, and he contemplated whether to go ahead with this and buy a bus with a disabled access. He said the cost to him, and would it be effective for him, because he did make a point, if he was the only operator in the streetry and somebody from Gatehouse phoned him up, he would have to charge them the taxi fare for Dalbeattie to Gatehouse, then pick them up to take them where. But she thinks at the end of the day, it's got to hit the pocket of people who it's got to be needing this service. as I say, it's good to see the remit of the instruction, and I thank Sian for the report today.
Councillor Dashba.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, no, it's a good wee report we've got in front of us. I do note that we did this survey through LVSA and they compiled a report, and I apologise if this has already been circulated to members, but the full report itself isn't linked to within this report from LVSA. So would it be possible for members to get sight of that again? Thanks.
Ms Davidson.
Yes, thank you. The report can certainly be circulated to members. It's quite a lengthy report and very complex. There's a lot of detail in it that we're currently working through, but that will absolutely be circulated to members, not a problem.
And Councillor Marshall.
Thank you. Just a couple of points, and it's just, it does make reference to the cap that was put on of a total of 70, and it goes back to the old Nithsdale District Council in 1986. But I suppose myself and other members can remember that we reaffirmed this maybe about 10 years ago, because there was a problem at the time with the amount of private operators using taxi ranks, and so we decided to reaffirm that limit of 70. So I'm just wondering, you know, are we comfortable to remove that cap? Will it maybe not cause the same problem that arose some years back? And also at the time, I think the reason why it came ahead is that we had regular meetings of council with taxi operators and private operators. So I'm just wondering, do we still do that? So we're keeping in regular contact with them. The other thing as well is obviously it's quite concerning that there's only seem to be 4 vehicles that are wheelchair accessible. And I'm just looking at the recommendations, and it does say in the report as well, it is very expensive for operators to kind of provide this kind of service. And I'm just wondering, is there no way there's any potential to develop any grant scheme to assist that? Because I'm just thinking as well, apart from the restriction because of the amount of vehicles that are available, this will also probably affect the pupils in wheelchairs that are going to schools, etc. So I'm just wondering how, with only having 4, that seems like a very low number to cover the whole of the region.
Right, there's a few points there, Ms Davidson.
Yes, thank you for that. So obviously the limit has been in place for a substantial amount of time now. As part of the next report coming before members, there will be options available to them, and that will include either keeping the cap as it is, increasing the cap, or potentially even removing it completely. But we will fully explore those options and the pros and cons that come with that as well. So there will be the fullest of information before you make any decision in respect of the cap. In respect to the low number of WAVs, yeah, I absolutely take on board, and that kind of came out in the survey, the fact that wheelchair accessible vehicles are exceptionally expensive to purchase and maintain. We have looked at potential incentives that could be available to operators, and there was grant funding available that was circulated to them all last year, and I believe from Business Gateway that nobody actually took up that offer, but we are working closely with Business Gateway in respect of incentives that are open to either current operators or potentially new businesses in respect of purchasing vehicles that will be wheelchair accessible as well. So we will be working closely with them in respect of funding available, but that is, within the report, that is the principal challenge that has came out of it, is the funding and the expense of actually running a wheelchair accessible vehicle.
Yeah, thanks. I think with that, I've got reassurance, with regards to the cap, etc., that'll be fully explored. So thanks for the officer for confirming that.
Because I also think it's not just the capital of buying the vehicle. There's additional costs if it's got a electric ramp or anything. That has to go through a separate sort of standard to make sure it's working. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. We would have to look at a different specification for the vehicles, for wheelchair accessible vehicles, for the testing particularly. They have to have what is referred to as a LOLER certificate in respect of the mechanical ramp, if you like, for getting the wheelchair in and out of the vehicle. So it is an additional expense which we need to explore whether that's going to be payable by the council or by the operator. But there's quite a few other implications in respect to the testing of wheelchair accessible vehicles that normal saloon type vehicles don't have to go through as part of their 6 monthly vehicle checks to ensure that they're safe for the road.
Councillor Slater.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the report. But as other colleagues have said here, one of the main reasons is the cost of these vehicles. It's very high. Also, there's more health and safety issues when you have these vehicles, and also the weight of the vehicle, because the vehicle tends to use more fuel as well, so that adds to the cost. As regards any sort of grants available in the future, but that might happen, but I feel at this moment in time the issue really is the cost of people running them and purchasing them and maintaining them. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so I suppose the first question was just around the availability of wheelchair accessible taxis. It says, I think there's 3 mentioned, referred to in the report, and I was just wondering where are they geographically, because obviously that has a bearing, as Councillor Stitt touched upon. You know, there are issues about if you're based in one place but you're going to have to travel so far to pick up a fare, as it were, then obviously that's a factor. So it'd be helpful to know just where they are anyway. Secondly, I know we have a taxi card scheme which effectively might be rendered useless because there's no available taxis for the person who might have a disability, and obviously that would be regrettable. The other thing, just in terms of recommendations at there's the recommendations from the report in 4.4, which are fairly clearly set out there in terms of the LVSA report. And then there's the next steps, which we've been asked to consider, which is sort of asking us to consider the recommendations in 4.4, and I think we're hearing that a subsequent report will come to us with the options outlined. So presumably we're not deciding today about caps and all the rest of it. We're just basically saying, yes, we'll get that at a future report to then determine those options. Yep.
Can you just clarify that point for Councillor Thompson?
Yes, certainly. Yeah, no, a full report will come back with the options. This is really just to update you in respect of the work that we've undertaken to date, and then the next steps. We want to make sure that we explore absolutely every option available to members that will hopefully assist the community in having additional wheelchair accessible vehicles available, and indeed looking at increasing the actual current taxi fleet as well, because there is a significant amount of unmet demand with taxis as a whole, not just wheelchair accessible vehicles.
So just on the geographical location of the wheelchair accessible ones, and just while you're mentioning that, what do we know about the app-based type taxi services who aren't maybe necessarily licensed with the council, and what, you know, because obviously that's an issue in some places, so it would just be helpful to know how that fits into the wider picture in terms of taxis. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So the 3 wheelchair accessible vehicles we have at the moment, 2 are based within Dumfries and there's 1 in Stranraer at the moment. So they're obviously not, with there being only 3, there's not a widespread across the region. App-based bookings, we don't have Uber as an example within Dumfries and Galloway. They've never actually approached us as a licensing authority to have the facility within our area. I am aware that there are some businesses within the region who do offer app-based private hire vehicles, as well as telephone calls as well, but that's just operated through their own kind of in-house processes. It's not that the vehicles are actually licensed as individual vehicles to each individual operator, and in effect what they do is they rent a radio from that company and they get their fares through the app or through the telephone booking system.
And Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, just to come back, and when the questions asked was, I can remember there was a group, we used to meet with the taxi operators on an ongoing basis. I just wondered if that was still in place, and if it isn't, just maybe the reason why. And in the next steps as well, does that also include engagement with all, or an opportunity to engage with all the current taxi operators, private hire vehicle owners?
Ms Davidson.
Yeah, thank you. Historically, there was a taxi licensed trade association within Dumfries that has fell by the wayside, which was run independently to the council. It was run specifically by the trade. In respect of engagement, we will absolutely fully engage with the taxi and private hire trade in respect of any potential changes and outcomes in respect to the unmet demand survey as well. They obviously provided some critical information to LVSA in respect of the unmet demand survey, and they were fully engaged during that process as well. So we will be keeping them up to date at every possibility, and obviously their input is really vital in respect to this.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, and thank you for the report. As Councillor Stitt said, this was raised by him and I in December 2023, and whilst appreciating the complexity, and I thank you for all the work that's been done so far, we're so concerned that at that point there was 3 disabled taxis that were available in Dumfries and Galloway, and unfortunately this is still the case. And I'm just wondering if, given that the report's not coming back to January, February, I'm wondering if there's anything that can be done to speed this up, because we were both contacted. The reason for bringing the motion forward, we were contacted separately from people struggling with disabilities, and they're still in the same situation. Thank you.
Ms Davidson.
Yes, thank you. Following the full council report in December 23, there actually was an increase in the number of wheelchair accessible vehicles within the region. It actually went up to 6. So although it was still a low number, it actually doubled. That number has come down, and speaking with the operators, the reason that they are no longer operating the wheelchair accessible vehicle is purely down to cost, plus the fact that they feel that they're almost restricting themselves too much. The majority of their fares and their income comes from general fares that are pre-booked or that they're picking up off the street. And the operating of a wheelchair accessible vehicle, they felt was restricting their business somewhat. So I was heartened to see that there was operators there that were willing to put a wheelchair accessible vehicle on the road and license it, but also obviously disappointed to see that hasn't manifested into something more long term. I kind of touched briefly earlier in respect to the Business Gateway, and I am kind of contacting them on a fairly regular basis just to see about the funding. It might be that there's other streams of funding potentially in relation to electric vehicles that can be adapted into wheelchair accessible vehicles, but it's quite a challenge when we know that the reason, or the main reason, why operators are not putting these vehicles on the road is down to cost. Which obviously the licensing service doesn't really have a great deal of say over, but I mean, we will absolutely cover every avenue that we possibly can to try and assist the operators in getting these vehicles on the road. We do recognise this as a serious issue across the region.
Is there any opportunity through the legislation to actually make it that there has to be so many in an area, or is there a way we could say, right, there's an extra 5 licences available in the borough, but they have to then use it for going to other areas?
Yeah, I mean, certainly as part of the options, and I'll kind of touch on the cap rather than the area as a whole, although it's the same principle. If members decided that they maybe wanted to raise the cap from 70 to say 90, part of that decision could be any additional taxis over the 70 must be wheelchair accessible. similarly for the rest of the region, you know, any new applications that come in for new operators could be, again, they must be wheelchair accessible vehicles at that point. What we need to be very careful of, that we're not discouraging new operators, new taxi operators to come on the line on the system, so that we're not then almost diminishing the current taxi demand in an attempt to try and increase the wheelchair accessible vehicle demand as well. It's a bit of a fine balance to make sure that we're not discouraging people from applying for taxi licences, but that certainly is an option available to members if they wish to suggest that any future applications should be wheelchair accessible.
Councillor Dashper.
Thanks for letting me back in, Chair. I'm looking at the appendix, Annex 2, the bottom pre-booked hires. For the avoidance of doubt, where the vehicle is pre-booked rather than hailed in a public place, a higher fare may be charged. Could we just get some clarity around that? So, for example, if someone rings a taxi and says they want it, you know, in the next 5-10 minutes or something, does that class as a pre-booked hire because it's not being hailed in a public place, even though they want it immediately? Thanks.
Ms Davidson.
Yes, thank you for that. Absolutely right. The maximum fare structure relates solely to taxis while they're acting as a taxi. So basically, if they're hailed off the rank or hailed in the street, if it's a pre-booked vehicle, even if it's a pre-booked taxi, it then in effect becomes a private hire, which doesn't fall under the maximum fare structure. What we recommend to people, and we have done a kind of publicity campaign, certainly leading up to the festive period in the past, in respect of trying to make members of the public aware that they should agree the fare at the time of booking, and then they're fully aware of how much they will be charged for that. Whereas they've got the comfort with the maximum fare structure, if you're hailing it off the street, you know that they cannot charge over and above what's set out in the structure. Private hires do have the ability to charge whatever fare they want, so it's quite imperative that members of the public know that they should be finding out at the outset what the fare would be at that point.
Very interesting. Thank you.
With that, there's no other hands. If we move to recommendations. Oh, sorry, Councillor Dorward.
No problem, Chair. Thank you. And thank you for the report. Really good. As my colleague, Councillor Wilson, has said, we do appreciate the report. It's very complex. It's a really challenging issue to deal with in Dumfries and Galloway, the economies of scale and the centres of population being so wide apart. It's not easy. It's not like managing things in a city where things are much more straightforward. But Councillor Wilson made a point that it was quite a long question, so you didn't include the answer. And based on the fact that we don't have many wheelchair accessible taxis in the region, and also we have increased and growing demand for individuals who require wheelchair accessible taxis, is there any chance of the report being brought to Council sooner? No issues with what you've said in the report so far and the recommendations, but any I know that it's difficult, that there's you know, capacity issues, and they do 1,000 or other things, so I'm not saying you're not doing any work. That's not criticising what you do, but given the demand, and the demand's constant from individuals with disabilities in the region, this will be almost 2 years, and that is not a criticism, by the way, it's just an observation, so I'm not criticising what you're doing, or you know, neither is the Labour group, but is there any chance of this report being brought back sooner, just in terms of meeting the needs of the individuals who are asking for a change in taxi provision? Thank you.
Mr Valiente, you want to take this one?
Yes, thank you. I absolutely understand the overall demand in terms of the lack of those kind of accessible taxis, as mentioned, in private hire cars. However, I think the first bit, and you know, we've been working quite hard in this project. The first part was obviously to get this over the line, and then thereafter there's a number of engagements and various other processes that we need to do, including further kind of benchmarking, and within that we want to get that right. there's probably no, and I think members have alluded to it, there's probably no perfect solution to this because of the cost implications, and therefore even if we speed that process up at this point in time, we might not get to a quicker solution to it. I'm keen to get this right, to have the right engagement and process with both elected members and members of the trade, and ensure that we get to the right solutions. And that includes obviously proper benchmarking across the local authority to see what innovative thinking there is around it, and there's no perfect answer to it. And I've discussed this matters with equivalents elsewhere, and even those in the bigger cities are suffering in terms of a lack of both taxis and private hire available within those places. So in essence, I'll give you an assurance that we'll go through this as quickly as we can, but no promises in terms of I'd rather get it right and give members a robust report that you can make decisions upon.
Right, with that, if we move to the recommendations, members are asked to consider the key issues and recommendations identified through the unmet demand survey, detailed in paragraphs 4.3 and 4.4, and agree the actions to be undertaken detailed in paragraph 4.7. Are we also wishing to add anything like at the earliest possible opportunity, which means, you know, we want it done properly, but if it can be fast-tracked. Councillor Slater.
Yes, Chair, this is a start. As you are aware, there's a large taxi company in the world called Uber. We don't own any taxis, but would it be worth speaking with a large company like that if they could maybe help in some ways? It's just a thought that might, if you don't ask, you don't get. Thank you.
I think it'll be something that we'll actively do through this process, is to speak to all taxi operators if possible, if they wish to engage, and ask if they can actually bring something forward through their own abilities. Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, just on your suggestion, Chair, that, you know, at 4.7, the final bullet point, taken on board what my Labour colleagues are saying, is that if we just add in by January, we've got by January, February 2006, or earlier date if possible.
Yeah, I think we've got an undertaking from the officers. If it is possible, they will bring it earlier, but they want to make sure this is done properly so that we can get the best result. So I don't know if we want to add that in or just take it from the officers that that will happen. Councillor Marshall, are you happy that if officers have sort of given that undertaking, if it's possible, or do you wish it recorded?
Yeah. No, if that's what's been said and they've taken that on board, then that's fine.
Right, thank you for that. Now move on to item 6. Thanks, everyone. Review and update of procurement strategy for financial years 24-25 through 25-26. Members are presented with updates to the Council's procurement strategy action plan for approval as part of the annual review of the strategy. Karen Scott is here to assist members if you have any questions. Over to the members. Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I've got a couple of questions on this. I was just wondering, in terms of, I think it mentions on page 66 about a community wealth building regional forum, and I know this is a sort of backward look at the 2022 to 25 type period, but is there any update on that? Because obviously a lot of the questions might relate to where are we now, given the report we've got in front of us. And I was just wondering as well, particularly around, I mean, roads obviously remain a concern and have been a priority for all the groups across the council. But in terms of impact and outcome, a lot of the feedback I'm getting now is that repairs that we're doing are failing within the year, let's say, or within 6 months or something. So the reason why I'm linking that back to this is, you know, I think we've got a number of methods for dealing with the roads, but effectively each time we do that, that's part of an annual budget. And if we're getting 6 months worth of repair out of a 1 year fund, that doesn't seem like good value. So I'm just sort of wondering, are we investigating the likes of, I think we would use spray injection as well as, but I realise there's pothole machines that often get talked about, and a lot of other local authorities across Scotland, for example, and the rest of the UK are using these based on national frameworks through Scotland Excel. I'm aware of one that's been sort of celebrated and won an award at APSI, which I know we're a member of, and we would obviously see that as a value. So I'm just sort of thinking, and again, some of our neighbouring authorities like Scottish Borders and others, you probably know which one I'm talking about, but I'm just wondering, how does this then inform where we go next in terms of getting best value out of procurement for how we tackle roads through capital investment? Thank you.
Ms Scott.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Thompson, for the questions. I'll come back to the first question first in relation to the Community Wealth Building Regional Forum. So we have an informal group that's been set up and is referenced within the action plan updates. That's under the kind of leadership and direction of the Community Planning Partnership at this time. And so that has representation across the full CPP membership, including third sector D&Gs. So that's quite an informal group at this time. We've been doing a lot of work to try and establish exactly where we are in terms of a baseline position, and there will be recommendations coming forward through the summer through the CPP to form that into a more formal community wealth building regional partnership. At the moment, that's very much focused around the procurement spending pillar, but again, consideration's been taken into the opening of that wider, but certainly there's a lot of activity ongoing at the moment through that working group, as it's been kind of branded at the moment, but that will come through with formal roles and responsibilities as we move forward throughout the summer. In relation to your second question regarding the performance under the roads contracts, we have obviously recently just awarded significant contracts. So there has been some ad hoc smaller contracts that were awarded in the earlier part of the year, which really were to make sure we started to quite literally hit the ground running and start to get some roadworks on site. We have subsequently now entered into longer term frameworks and contracts to support the delivery of the investment in the roads programme. Those longer term contracts do give us greater opportunity in terms of reviewing the success and performance of some of the contracts being delivered. So where we are experiencing performance issues, we've obviously got that longer term contract that we can work with the suppliers around. Why are we having failures? Sometimes it may be to do with the conditions of the ground, the temperature, the weather, when we've actually undertaken some of the work, which might reduce the life of the repair. But certainly those longer term contracts give us the opportunity to work in partnership with those suppliers over a longer period of time to make sure we're addressing any issues that occur, and we actually manage those and ensure that if it has only lasted 6 months and there was no other reason for that, that we then get that repaired at no further cost to the council, so it's not coming out of a future year's capital funding. But again, we're also utilising some of the national frameworks and contracts around about that wider programme of work as well.
Yeah, no, thanks. That's helpful, and appreciate the value of the longer contracts for that contract monitoring. I'm thinking more along the lines of, because we have a now enhanced in-house roads service, because it's not just our contractors that carry out work, it's us that carries out work as well. And I think in either this report or the next one, it talks about the some of the fleet that we've purchased, which is sort of in-house, if you like. And I think that's where I'm trying to get to in terms of, are there potential capital investments that would allow our teams, notwithstanding any contractors carrying out work on our behalf, to maybe yield a better repair rate, longevity, and is that something that we're looking at? And if not, why not? Thank you.
Ms Scott.
Thanks. And absolutely, we obviously work with our colleagues in Fleet and Roads as the technical matter experts around the kind of longevity of the repairs that are being provided. So we fully support the in-house team around what's actually procured in terms of the materials and the plant used. We can certainly make sure, I'm not aware of anything specifically, but that doesn't mean it's not taking place through the working groups that I don't personally sit on at this time. But we can certainly make sure that any other technologies that are out there are being fully considered. Typically, I'm aware that my team alongside roads and fleet personnel do attend the Scotland Excel UIGs, which do obviously have the suppliers come forward with new technologies, new equipment, new types of fleet as they're becoming available, and sharing experiences and best practice with other local authorities as well. So if someone has taken advantage of some new plant that's available in the market, then they share that, and that's considered through those user intelligence groups as a matter of course. I'm just not aware of any specifics that's at play at this time, but happy to follow up on that with you.
I think it's maybe one E&I should be keeping their finger on, because they're the sort of roads authority. They should be making sure that if there's new technologies or better technologies, they would be bringing it to procurement to see about making sure that we have the right thing here. But I think E&I should be the first place of call for, if it's failing, they need to make sure that they're putting the right equipment and the right tarmac or whatever into the job. So it's maybe a link between the two committees for that one. Yeah.
Just on that, Chair, no, thanks for that intervention. I think it was really just about while E&I mean, it does actually get raised there, I think, in various sort of guises, but I think there is I think that we would always want to be ready to hear from our neighbouring local authority in the borders, for example, or in Cumbria or whatever, and also from APSI, because sometimes we need bigger heads than our own to find the best solution, because we might, you know, and I think as long as we're open to that, I think that's really the assurance I'm looking for. Thank you.
Councillor Slater.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Probably my question is, how far do you look for new equipment? There's a machine in Germany which actually, one driver, it's about the size of a forklift, it goes along the pavement and it uses an electromagnet, believe it or not. It lifts the grating off, slides it to the side, and it cleans the drain, vacuums it out, cleans it all, puts it back in. It takes about 45 seconds to do that for golly. Now, this is obviously another country doing that. There's another system as well that they use in the States, because we have a continual problem with water potholes that are maybe not repaired properly and they come back out. But what they do with many of them there is they dig it out, they fill it, and then they have a material. It's just like a sheet of vinyl, you could say, and they roll it over, they roll it out across the top of it, and it basically glued to the road. So the pothole is then covered, it's protected against the weather, and then the road's like part of it's really resurfaced. So why are these situations not being looked at? We continue going on with buckets of tar and hammering it down and that, but I don't understand why you're not looking for this type of equipment. It would probably save many hundreds of thousands of pounds over a period of time. It might be initially expensive to buy, but if it can do a drain in maybe 45 or a minute or something like that, that's surely a good thing, how many they could do in a day. So really the question is, how far are you looking into these things, rather than just hot boxes and the shovel and slap method? You could probably say that there's far better equipment out there, and you really, I hope that you're looking at that. Thank you.
Ms. Scott, I take it a lot of these things will be brought to you as the procurement team, so that would come, I would think, from the actual service. So back to E&I, if there's these things, I would expect officers to bring it, and if we're actually, you know, needing to look at the examples you gave, that would be something that our systems of procurement, if they were the best things, you would be able to deliver on that, as in we are fit to go and look at a vehicle in Germany, etc. Is that correct?
Thanks, Chair. And yes, your understanding is correct. We do, however, obviously still have those ongoing engagements that I referenced earlier through Scotland Excels, so that we do advertise openly. It's on the Scottish version and European versions as well, to say here's the opportunities that exist. So we do encourage offers to come not just within an immediate remit, but again we take the opportunity through the UIGs, through Scotland Excel, and again through APSI that was referenced by Councillor Thompson earlier. We take the learning from other authorities to influence and inform some of the thinking that is, as you say, considered through the technical experts within E&I Service Directorate.
Councillor Slater.
Yes, Chair, I understand. But is it not a good idea? You can ask people to come forward, but that doesn't always happen. Sometimes you've got to physically go out and speak to these people. And I must admit, I can send you some examples of that type of equipment, how it works, and maybe that could be looked at for future, because the way we're going at the moment, we fill the pothole, it breaks down, we fill the pothole, it breaks down, and I believe it costs an average £50 at least a pothole to fill it. I'm being told that. So if you've better equipment and better ways of doing it, as technology is moving on, and it's really something that should be, you should really be going out and looking for these companies, I think. That's my personal view.
I think we're getting mixed up between the delivery of the service and how we procure the service. What we're looking here is how we actually procure it. So I think you need to go to E&I and say, there are these other things, have we looked at them? And then if there's something better out there, they'll then bring it to the procurement service to actually make sure that we buy it at the best price and legally, and everything is all done properly. But I think it'll be a case of that we do actively look at other things through the other services. But here we're looking at how we actually procure and how we go about procuring things. So there are opportunities there. Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll raise the one again about, and I mean, I know this is raised, it was raised a number of years ago, and I think over the last year with the implementation of the strategy, we have made some really significant steps. It's in relation to local businesses in Dumfries and Galloway, and mainly the, you know, the sole trader, the SME, the micro businesses. So I have noted, you know, that I think on page 61, we have had engagement with local suppliers to try and remove some barriers, and also I think a couple of bullet points down that we're continuing to simplify the tender documents, which is a big resource taker for some of these small businesses to actually, you know, put together tender documents for that. And also I think the lotting strategies for contracts, so that there's an opportunity for a number of small businesses locally to get together and maybe bid for some of the larger contracts. So there is work that's being done, and you know, and I think the work that has been done has been able to reduce some of the red tape, paperwork, etc., and some of the resources that are needed to kind of submit from that. But I'm just wanting to know Karen's view on the next year of the strategy. What kind of things do you see that we can further improve that? Because it still is a challenge for some of these businesses to actually tender for that. And also, what have been the kind of main things that have allowed these businesses to have a more active role in bidding for contracts with the council?
Ms. Scott, I think we've also got a couple of Meet the Buyer events coming up. So that's another opportunity for local businesses to come in and see what we are looking for, what other public sector partners may be looking for, and how we can help them, you know, bid in for contracts as through, you know, this is the forms you need to do. So could you maybe address the other points?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Marshall, for the question. I guess just adding to the Meet the Buyer events, and it probably answers part of the kind of next year's strategy and how we continue to improve. One of the kind of key things we're looking at is how we can further support greater collaboration and formation of cooperatives. So one of the kind of key themes that we'll have through those planned Meet the Buyers for later in April will be around bringing together and creating a space for businesses from particular sectors, which we do know we have particular challenges in securing bids from, so that they can start to get some support that's available through Scottish Enterprise and their Cooperative Development Scotland funding pot to try and support them to come together to actually bid as cooperatives over and above the work that we're already doing around lotting. So there's a few sectors that will target around that and give them the space to start to form those business relationships in the event itself as well. I think that will be an ongoing kind of area of focus for us. Other activities that we're kind of doing will be a further join up around other public sector organisations through the community wealth building working group that I referenced earlier that's been established. We're looking to try and join up those work plans so that we're not actually creating a further capacity issue within the region, particularly in areas where we know there is a finite capacity of local businesses to deliver those contracts. So we'll try and bring together each of our work plans and try and kind of strengthen that throughout the year, so that the businesses can bid for ourselves, bid for the college, bid for the NHS, instead of us all going out in April at the same time, and they can only win in that short window. So we're looking to improve that through that activity as well.
Can I quickly come back as well, and just, is there anything further we can do on reducing kind of red tape, paperwork, etc., in the tendering process?
Yeah, so again, this has been an ongoing area that we've continued to further develop and improve upon. So we have got different levels of documentation that's used depending on the value and complexity of the contract. It is also a continued area of debate and discussion with suppliers that we have, recognising we do need to ensure that there's some form of open, transparent process that has some form of robust contract at the end of it. So it's always trying to create that balance, but certainly it's an ongoing area that we'll continue to review and develop and seek feedback from suppliers, both successful and unsuccessful, around areas of that documentation that could be further streamlined. And we'll continue to review and improve that as we move forward. But as you said earlier, there has been a lot of work around trying to ensure that's proportionate to date.
Thank you for that.
Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm looking at pages 77 and 78. And as everyone's aware, it's been well recorded that there are several thousand hours of unmet need. Whilst this area falls under the remit of the IJB, the responsibility for delivery of it falls to our social work department. And I'm wondering what we're doing in relation to contracting to try and meet the social needs, social care needs of our adults.
Ms Scott.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor McFarlane, for the question. So we have been working closely with our colleagues in IJB. We recognise the continued challenges around this area. We typically commission adult services through national contracts, both in terms of care at home and the care homes themselves. And we have been working through national colleagues to look at alternative ways of delivering. So colleagues through IJB are looking at alternative ways of trying to meet some of that need through use of technology, for example, and there are a number of pilot projects underway to try and support that activity, which again we're supporting through the procurement of such contracts, but certainly looking and working with our colleagues across Scotland to look at other ways of how we can try and support that, given the ongoing cost pressures associated with delivering the care.
With that, there's no other hands up. If members move the recommendations, members are asked to approve the updates to the action plan in the Council's procurement strategy for 24-25, 25-26 within the appendix, and note that this committee will receive an annual report to provide a complete update on progress and achievements from the Council procurement strategy as soon as is reasonably practical on completion of the financial year. Members happy to approve and note? No dissent. Move on to item 7. Procurement and commissioning performance update, financial year 24-25, quarter 3. This report presents a quarter 3 update on procurement and commissioning performance. Ms Scott is here to assist if members have any questions. Over to members. Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to Annex B, the local supplier spends, I think I've raised this before, and I take cognizance as well, though, at page 89, that identifying the local suppliers by company size is down to using the Spikes Cavell reporting tool, which I take is something that the council can feed in updates into. It's just, and I have raised before, that I'm just really wanting to understand what information, or whether the company has to provide that information to the council to deem the actual size of the company, because a lot of them, and there's not as many now, so the work has been done, but there's a number that have got, you know, unknown size. But when you look at it, I think on page 108, one of them, which is unknown size, is just an individual. So I'm taking that most of these, because of the kind of the business set up in Dumfries and Galloway, most of these will be micro businesses or SMEs or sole traders. So I'm just wondering what we can do, because on the face of it, we can probably establish what the size is, but we have, you know, we just have unknown size in the column. So it's really just a little bit more understanding how we can actually improve that even further.
Ms Scott.
Thank you. So in terms of the information, it's information that's available publicly. It's not something that we actually input ourselves. So it's determined by information that's searchable through Companies House, and that's used by the Spikes Gabel tool, which has provided access to ourselves from Scottish Government to allow for such reporting to be undertaken. So it's not something at this time that we provide for manually. However, we are also have a working group established at the moment that is looking at how we produce the data for the quarterly reports going forward. So we are looking at exploring options of producing that directly out of the Council's financial management system, and should that take place, we would then undertake more of a manual exercise which could further improve some of the gaps where the information is not held within Companies House. We would start to seek that through the tender process and feed that in, because that would then be fed into the Council's own financial management system. We obviously don't have that degree of influence over the national reporting tools.
Thanks for explaining that.
All right, Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Chair. It's maybe just back to the community wealth building metric. I appreciate this is for a quarter in the last year, but will we start to see, I think it refers to it in the previous report about we will be developing a way of capturing some kind of metric around, you know, how do we measure community wealth building within these types of reports. So there is a bit of a section under the Dumfries High School sort of thing in terms of community benefit. That's not quite the same though as the community wealth building bit, and I was just wondering if you could maybe speak to what we might start to see in future quarterly reports that relate to community wealth building. Thank you.
Ms Scott.
Thanks. And I guess that's an area that is under ongoing development. So that's something that I'm keen through the working group that's been established, that we ensure consistency across each of the organisations. So just now we're looking at what we can currently produce, and again, that's not even consistent at this time around each of the organisations. So once we can establish what we're all able to produce, because I guess ultimately it's about each of the anchor institutions coming together as well, and not just us acting in our own right. So we'll look to develop a suite of measures that we're all able to influence and extract data to evidence and provide audit trail around as well. So it's an area that's still under development at this time, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I had a couple of specific questions more to do with a couple of spends, because obviously this is part of the monitoring, and we do see what we're spending on, but we don't necessarily see how that, the impact, or did we get what we paid for sort of thing. So I'm just conscious, obviously the biggest chunk is the care and support at home bit, which is the 48-month contract award date from last year to the tune of 182 odd million. And I guess there's a sort of perennial question from elected members about, well, do we monitor the effectiveness of that contract, or is it through social work, but maybe less so because it's under direction from the IGB? So I think there's that kind of, sometimes a lack of clarity about how we know we're getting the best value we can, given the nature of the regulated contracts or whatever. And the other bit is a previous iteration of this committee, I think I'd certainly raised concerns about, you know, when is the new website going to be ready? Because we've got the two websites now still, and it is March, and I think that was when we got told it would be. But I did notice on page 103, the council website new build and maintenance contract was awarded in December for a 5-month duration. So does that mean it'll be May now? I'm just trying to keep track of, you know, I keep asking because I think we want the best possible representation, digital and otherwise, for the council for it to be effective. So that's there at 125 grand for the 5 months there. And I'm just sort of wondering, is that going to be ready soon, and who could speak to that? Thank you.
The one about the website, Ms. Meehan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. As members have been advised, the phase 1 of the web, which will fully move on to the new platform, will be complete by the end of May. I can confirm that remains the case.
And the other point with regard to monitoring the spend, will that come through the Service Committee rather than through the procurement?
Thanks, and you're correct, Chair. That would come through the contract monitoring, supply management would come through the service committees.
Is that based on IJB or social work? Are you able to tell us, or will something you can get back to us on?
I'll come back, I'll double check and confirm.
Councillor Slater.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's on page 89. Regards company size. How is that defined from like a small company and micro company? Is it because the number of employees or the turnover figures? Thank you.
Ms. Scott.
It's a combination of both, and again, it's determined it's set nationally in terms of what deems a micro business, a small, and this is the information that I referenced earlier that's extracted from Companies House based on the financial information that's submitted by each business.
So we do it, the council doesn't do that themselves, they just plagiarise from Company House. Thank you.
Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, I'm interested in page 93, the reference to engage with local construction companies. I know it might be out with the council's responsibility, but we have declared a housing emergency, a crisis, and we are promoting the whole idea of our RSLs and others to build more houses. But what seems to be difficult is to get a local, sizable construction company to actually take on some of the contracts. Do we have any influence or with reference to the one-to-one dialogue in trying to get them to come together to maybe take on some of these buildings or have got the capacity to do that? I just wonder what the situation is there. And again, with reference to page 89 and the size of the small company, micro, so forth and so on, have we been successful in any way of bringing these small companies together to form some kind of cooperative to take on the likes of windy cleaning, where that seems to be going out with the region to clean the council windies, buildings and so forth?
Ms. Scott.
Thanks, and thanks, Councillor Scobie. In relation to the first question regarding the housing crisis and the construction companies, again, this is particularly part of the focus and core agenda around the schedule to meet the buyers for April. So I'm aware McTaggart Construction have been appointed to deliver 3 new housing developments round about Newton Stewart and Stranraer. So they're coming along to both the Dumfries and the Newton Stewart events to promote and try and give access to the subcontracting opportunities that will arise from that. So again, we're going to do some targeted promotion of the events and of McTaggart Construction specifically, and those opportunities that will be arising as a consequence of that. So we can't obviously influence exactly who they use, but we're creating that opportunity in space and encouraging local businesses to come along and meet with them, given the recent appointment they've had for those 3 particular developments. We did similar last year with Wheatley Group as well, and we had them actually stand up present at the Meet the Buyer events last year to talk about the forthcoming opportunities that they had at that particular time. Again, that will run alongside the presentations and support from Cooperative Development Scotland. So again, we're going to have some separate space at those events where businesses who are like-minded to come together, be that different trades, for example, or indeed different geographies, for them to have a space that they can network, get to know each other a little bit more and have that support from CDS available to them around setting up and bidding as cooperatives, which takes us to a slightly different place to where we are just now in terms of the lotting strategies that have been deployed to break contracts down into smaller sizes to again give access to the smaller businesses. I think that was and obviously Ms Meehan's answered the second question. Thanks.
And well, I actually attended the Wheatley workshop last year, and they did give opportunities for smaller companies to come in and bid in for is it term work, I think they used to call it, where they could, you know, if they're needed locally. So they are able to come in. Whether they're able to take on the work, if it's too big, I don't know, but hopefully we would encourage two small companies to come together and work together to deliver something like that. Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report. A couple of questions, slightly related to what Councillor Thompson was talking about in relation to social care, but on page 88, to procurement compliance, underneath the table it says areas of spend which could not be matched to a compliant contract within the reporting period is summarised below. And the one I want to focus on is agency staff, which in the report it says is primarily relates to social care agency staff. Question is maybe an obvious one. Why can't that be matched to a compliant contract, and what is the actual spend on this to date? And linking that into care and support at home on page 98, which is considerable spend that we and rightly so, on care and support at home for vulnerable adults in the region. Is it related to the, is there anything there? And if it is, what percentage of this is for agency staff? Thank you.
Ms Scott.
Thank you, and thanks for the question, Councillor Dorward. In relation to the agency staff, there is national contracts that are available to use, and we are using the framework providers within that, but we haven't fully completed a value for money assessment, and has been predominantly driven by availability only, and we have had some providers that have indicated they don't have availability. However, we can see through other means that they do. So there's a piece of work that has been ongoing that we'll start to see for the annual report, reporting positions, that will see a significant improvement around that activity. However, at the time, obviously this related to Q3 performance, so we've had to report it in that manner. However, we have made good improvements around that, so that we've got a better position and significantly reduced the agency spend around social care. I don't have the figures to hand, but can certainly follow up with those after the committee, and again can show where it was and that reduction that you'll then see in terms of the annual report and going forward into the new financial year.
And Councillor Mail.
Thank you, Chair. It's page 84, Travel Connectivity and Infrastructure. It's the appointment of consultants to develop 6 travel routes. It's the question, will these consultants work closely with the local communities and businesses that are involved in these areas in travel and tourism? Because I think it's vital that they do, and not just try and impose something upon the communities.
Are you able to answer that one, Ms Scott?
Thanks. My understanding is the specification does include an obligation on any of the consultants to work with the wider community groups and those directly involved. So my understanding is they're contractually obliged to do so.
Right, with that, there's no other hands up. Recommendations. Members are asked to note the content of the procurement and commissioning performance update for Q3 of financial year 2024-25 as provided at the appendix. So members happy to note? Nodding. Yep. I think that's everybody happy. Move on to item 8, People Experience Framework, Measuring Success. Members are presented with a proposed framework to measure the experience of our workforce and evaluate success and progress. This follows members' request that a single framework for measuring the impact and progress of the Council's workforce or people plans and strategies should be developed. Mr James McDowell is here to assist if members have any questions. Over to members. Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. and you know, aware of the reports before on this, and you know, it is a good report with regards to the strategic outcomes, actions, and the action plan going forward. I think I would like to kind of focus back on, you know, because this is all based on a survey that was done in 2023, and my main question is, when I read through some of those, there is areas of concern, obviously, from the feedback. It was quite, I think, you don't get a. I think the response we got back was an encouraging response with regards to completion of the surveys. But if you look at some of the information in the main themes, and I'll just pick out, you know, that 2/3, 2 in 3 wouldn't speak highly of the council and wouldn't be advocates for the council. So this is the starting point that we're going to have to come from. 7 out of 10 staff feel the council is not genuinely interested in the well-being. That's on page 122. On page 124, 4 out of 5 employees think that internal communications effectiveness is not good across the whole organisation. And another worrying one on page 126, 3 out of 4 staff don't believe best practice and good ideas are openly shared across the council. So with that in mind, there's a steep challenge ahead for the council to try and change and reshape some of these views for the betterment of everyone within the council. And I'm just wondering, it doesn't mention in the report, but will we then, at the end of 2026, apart from all other measures that were taken, will we do a similar survey to employees, and then we can actually compare the data with the data that we established back in 2023?
Mr McDowell.
Thanks, Chair. Through yourself, I'd just like to introduce a couple of colleagues as well, if I may. So last year, both Anna Jute and Lynn Patterson brought a couple of reports along to committee, and hence the reason why we're back here with the sort of framework, because I think it was clear, you know, there was good initiatives, actions happening, but how would we know the so what, as we keep saying. So I felt it was good to bring colleagues back that started the process off last year. So, but specifically on the questions that Councillor Marshall's asked there, absolutely, I think this document, when you see it on a page, basically for each theme, and it is back to those 5 themes that were developed as part of the survey response back in 2023. So it gives a sort of clear indication, as you say, around about the strategic outcomes, the strategic actions, how we measure it, whether it's quantitative or whether it's qualitative, you know, and again, there's some real good examples, but it gives us a good baseline, and I think that's where we start from. You know, if we've been open, transparent as an organisation, then we need to have that baseline, and it gives us that. On that final question, just about the next staff survey, we've programmed one in to be undertaken in 2027. That was part of the employee engagement framework that we brought last March. So in there was a programme about doing a full survey back in 2027. And again, it starts to measure trends. Thank you.
And just quickly come back, James. Glad to hear that, James, plus all the work that's been done in the meantime. But you know, to actually get a like-for-like comparison, probably you would have to ask the same questions and see if that has improved. So it's just seeking that guarantee.
Ms. Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. Absolutely, and I think that's something that the framework then makes more open and transparent, not only for officers and yourselves, but also all colleagues across the council. And the same questions will be used for our pulse check surveys as well, so that we've got a measure in between now and 2027, because I know it feels a long time away, but it won't be long in coming round, and it gives us time to action some of the initiatives that we have in the last 12 months as well. So you'll see the questions, it'll be the same question set and potentially additional ones, because we'd have a project team again, I would imagine, and it might be that some additional questions are asked to the ones that have already been asked. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. Really good. Again, we commend this report and the proactive approach to embedding trauma-informed practice. It's really good. It's referenced at 4.1, page 111 and page 112. And also working with IS, so you get a different perspective. So really good work. And very, very challenging, as sometimes the answers you get are not what you want or what you like to see. So we understand that, but appreciate that. The document on page 115, I think despite the fact some of the answers may be disquieting, we do appreciate the honesty of the reporting, because that's what you want, and that's the only way you can really improve with constructive criticism. And my colleague, Councillor Marshall, specified the issues. I won't go into the specifics of it. But again, regarding staff responses, we're encouraged by this and hope the type of reporting continues in the kind of TripAdvisor, other apps are available style, where you have really good and really bad responses, or perspectives, sorry, in terms of that. And an atmosphere is encouraged where folk can do that without fear. I think that can be a challenge in a corporate environment if folk fear there might be any retribution. I'm not suggesting it's in Dumfries and Galloway Council, but it can be in any public sector arena, having previous experience of that as well. But no, well done, and congratulations on the report and what you're doing. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and I do welcome the report. It's clearly, I mean, it was a necessary report given the results of the survey that we first got, and just which laid bare, I think, the difference between what maybe senior parts of the council thought was happening and what the staff actually thought. So, and I think that was illuminating and obviously helpful, because now we can see the scale of the journey that we need to go on to get to a much better place. So, and I think a lot of the stats are in there. Councillor Marshall referred to a few of them, and I would totally echo that we do need to, and it's good to get that assurance, but we do need to have the same question set. Whether there's additions or not, that's fair enough, but so that we know how well we've done. And I think through the joint consultative group, correct me if I'm wrong, but we do get the updates and the sense checks, which is helpful as well. So I think this is necessary. I think we need to be maybe have a bit of humility about it rather than celebrate it too much, because obviously we're starting from a not great place, but trying to get to a better place, and that's always the right direction. So I think particularly one of the ones that stood out for me was about less than half the staff had a staff appraisal, and I think there was another statistic about only about a third of staff felt that the council really valued them in that sense, or felt that was the case. So I think yeah, this is a step in the right direction, so we should welcome it. But let's see what the next survey comes out in 2027 yields, because that will be the real measure of success. Thank you.
And I suppose building on that, there was a point raised earlier about the sexual harassment. Would that be a question that you could build in and bring forward to see, how we're looking after our staff and what experience they're feeling?
Absolutely, and I think it's just worth mentioning that the data that's in here is from the survey, as pointed out, or it's from the annual workforce report as well. So it's not data that we're taking from anywhere else. It's already through committee. It's already been scrutinised through committee. So it's just bringing it together, and it's a flexible document as well. I think it's about making sure that we're clear about that. It's a flexible document that we can work with, because it's about telling the story, and whatever that story is that we want to tell, that this framework allows us to do that. So, thank you.
Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, picking up on the points Sean made, particularly on page 122, where it refers to, and there's a lot of percentage statistical detail, but it's the one where it says 30% feel the council is genuine, and as Sean said, that 7 out of 10 that don't feel the council is genuine in well-being. And then we look at the other side of that, the lived and living experience of burnt out, stress and lack of time to focus on well-being, and how much, in the conversations that you've had, is this down to the continual reduction in staff through cuts to public services and so forth, that you could elaborate on. And it's more to do with this, the absence reasons, and how you tie in with reports that go to committees where absenteeism is relatively high. Do you tie in, because the report is measuring success, so how do we get that 30% much, much higher, that the people genuinely, the workforce genuinely feel that the council is interested in their well-being. How do we do that?
Mr McDowell.
Yeah, I'll come in on that. I think it's a valuable point you make, Councillor Scobie, and I think it's hard work, but it's achievable, and it's being authentic as leaders. It's about engaging with staff. It's about supporting our staff. You know, last week we had a session, an event for wellbeing champions at the bridge. So we have over 70 wellbeing champions within the organisation, and it's about supporting them who are supporting others. You know, Anna in her role as engagement manager is out a lot. We have development sessions, we have focus groups, we have staff networks. These all feed into creating that well-being that we're thriving for as an organisation, and we need to continue that, and I think we will continue it as we move forward. But it's there, you know, it's there for us to grasp as an organisation. So that's it. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Chair. My question isn't actually properly on this report, but it's something that I think needs raised. And I'm looking at page 120 where it says 34% only 34% would speak highly of the council, but I do think it's becoming more and more apparent that perhaps some employees don't want to admit to working for the council, given some of the abuse on social media they are at times receiving for going about their jobs and implementing decisions that are made by members. Most recently there was a post regarding something that was a budget decision, and I'm just wondering what can be done about that. Thank you.
I think one of the things that I remember a story a former chief executive told me, Phil Jones. He was sitting in the pub one night and this guy came up and absolutely slated the chief executive of the council, told him he was the most useless thing, etc. And he asked him, and what do you do? Well, I'm Phil Jones, I'm the chief executive of the council. Oh, but I didn't mean you. And I think when you don't know the people, it's easy to criticise on Facebook, etc. And I think the point you've made, Caroline, is very good. You know, when people actually face you, they're maybe not so keen to say something adverse, but it's easy when you don't have to see somebody. But is there something we can do on that? Is it, Lorna, you might bring something?
I think it's a really good point, and the council has zero tolerance towards abuse to our staff, whether that be on social media or face-to-face or any other means. And there is complications with social media because that can be quite faceless and unidentifiable. And there's been some recent instances of that. Notwithstanding that, we have a campaign that was being launched to remind the public and our customers about that stance that council takes, and we do take it seriously and seek to protect our staff where any of those issues come forward, Councillor Wilson. So you make a good point, and it's certainly a feature of modern times. And the point you make about staff reluctance maybe to mention who they work for because of that is not such a new thing, but I do think the phenomenon of social media and those attacks being very personalised and promulgated in a much wider way is relatively new and quite difficult for a number of staff. So we certainly take it seriously, and we do all we can to try and address that directly where we can.
And I think another thing, myself and Councillor Marsh had been going around some of the services and the call centre, and it was after the budget. Some of the staff in there were getting some abuse about the budget decisions, which they shouldn't really be. You know, fair enough. I think our backs are broad enough. If we've taken a decision that the people don't like, they should maybe have a go at us. But I don't think they should pick on staff who are just answering the telephone, trying to do their best to help them. So I think your point is good. Follow up, Councillor Wilson.
I know, it's just, I appreciate your comments, because that's where we've be coming from. It's a decision made by members, so it's not the staff that make these decisions, but it does seem to be them that are then abused rather than us. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Slater.
Yes, thank you, Chair. While we're talking about staff and that, I met someone the other day in the street and they were quite upset because they said they'd just finished work after 44 years with the council and they felt as if there was no thank you or anything at all. And I felt a little bit sad for him, I must admit, really. So this is why I'm bringing it up in the meeting today. I feel like he was upset, but it's a long time to work for the council and it didn't appear to get any recognition for all that time. Thank you.
That's maybe something that we can look to improve when we go forward. Mr McDowell?
Absolutely happy to pick up a conversation offline if that's required. Absolutely. Thank you.
Count. Same point.
No, thanks so much, Chair. So it is on the same point, and I appreciate you allowing me to come in because it's something we've discussed for years. That it's a number of years. The amount of times we've came to this hall, whether it's an ex-director, chief executive, whoever it may be, and we've had a do and all the rest of it, so to speak. But we've had certainly a leaving event, but then a Rissman works for 40 years, or a roads operative, and it's almost like, okay, goodbye. And that's the impression that I've had that same complaint before. It's like, why do we leave that? And I think we do, it's time to put a proper policy in place. So when members go beyond a certain level of service working for the council, there's formal recognition, whether it's from the political element, whether the senior officials element, it must be something put in place. So I would be keen to see that supported too. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in.
Councillor Dorward.
It's just to emphasise what my colleague Councillor Wilson said, which is a really good point. I think the public need to be aware, and we need to have some way of doing this, that elected members make the decisions in the council and not council officers. And council officers should not be in any way abused on social media or in any other area. As you said, Chair, you know, we have broad shoulders. It's part of what we do. It's unfortunately part of the political discourse these days, but it's nothing to do with council officers. So I think it should be a very, very good point. I think that should be reinforced in some way by the council, that council officers are doing what elected members have asked them to do. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm looking at page 117, where it talks about the employee experience. And one of the things that appears to be missing is the personal development reviews. And we have received a number of reports over the past several months where performance in that area was very, very poor. And a lot of it was sort of put down to a tailback to COVID and such like. But one of the key things for me for making staff feel valued is actually showing a genuine interest in their development and how we support and coach them. And that seems to be missing from that bit there. So I'm just wondering if we get any sort of update as to how well we're performing in relation to that. One of the things it does say also on that page, though, is that an exit interview is offered. So it'd be interesting to know how many of those are completed or how many are taken up. Because I think where people feel valued, they're happy to give you an exit interview, but where they don't feel that the organisation's looked after them or been interested in them, then they'll tend to decline it because they just want to get away. Thanks.
Mr McDowell.
That's grand for yourself, Chair. Maybe take the exit interview first, if I may. So this year's part of the Customer and Digital Service Plan, the exit interview offered is a new PI for that, and it will come to committee. This committee is part of that, and it's about, as it says, it's making sure it's being offered. So we've put in a process in place behind it that makes that as part of the leaving process, so that it's something that the line manager must complete with regards to that. So, but the completion of that and the uptake of that is obviously voluntary, and I think it's something again that's built in with the culture. It's maybe back to what we touched on earlier about where people are, are not scared, are keen to share their views, because it's something as an organisation we should be constantly learning, and there's no better way to do that is through people who are leaving the organisation, whether it's retiring or promotion or whatever. So again, it's taking that into consideration. So we have a PI there that we are looking at it, and we can factor that in as we move forward. The appraisal element of it is within the document, and I'll maybe bring colleague Lynn in as well at some point, because obviously the old PDR, as it was called, and it was the wheel, and it was 37 pages long, and it was quite a laborious task to undertake. So we have moved towards that digital appraisal, and that's something that's within iTrent itself, the system iTrent, no extra cost to us as well, which is something that's very beneficial. However, we've got a bit of work to do with upskilling and just making sure everybody has access to the check-in process, and we're actively working with ICT and digital and other colleagues to make that happen. But I'll maybe ask Lynn just to say a few words on the check-ins itself, as it's called.
Ms Curry.
Thank you. Yes. Oh, sorry. Yep, so just to say that, our new digital appraisal process has been launched, and we will continue to, I suppose, more readily and easily be able to monitor compliance with that, and compliance figures will continue to be reported through our service performance reports. However, information from these check-ins and discussions that are taking place, the information from that will be used in part to inform our framework here. So it's sort of twofold, the way that we'll be using the information from them. Thank you.
And finally, Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, just following on from Carol, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Dorwood's point with regards to, and also the comments you've made, Chair. And it gets back, it is related to this because, if you work for whoever you work for, you should be proud of the services you provide, etc. And I do think some of that is down to, if you look at councils compared to other public sector organisations, you don't get staff abused on social media in the National Health Service as you do in local authorities, even though some of the work that's done is closely aligned to that, like social care, etc. It can be very disheartening. And, I totally agree with Councillor Dorwood that, that we should actually make it more clear that, it's councillors take decisions, we take the rap for that, that's part of the job, don't mind that. But with the growing number of keyboard assassins on highly prominent websites and Facebook pages, I do think as well that the council have to. We've just, I think, as the director mentioned, we've just not so long ago, stated, as a council on zero tolerance for this kind of thing, and indeed we have raised it with the governance officer, and we know the complexities of when statements are made attacking officers or people that work for the council on Facebook, how difficult that is. But we should send out a message that you can have a go at councillors, but don't have a go at staff that are just carrying out decisions that we've made or going about their normal duties. And let's face it, most of them are actually trying to provide a service that will enhance experience for people that live within whatever region you are in the UK. So I would like to see at some point maybe a report to an appropriate committee on how we actually send out a message, rather than actually just accepting it, which we seem to be at the moment as a council for all the criticism. You just have to, anything that the council puts out, proactively, straight away after about an hour, there's all these kind of comments on it, and then that's backed up by independent pages, and that must have a devastating effect on morale for council officers, especially if they're actually targeted out. So I'd like to see something, and I don't know, but I'm maybe looking at the governance officer for advice on how we actually get a report to the committee, and more importantly, some of the actions to counteract this and defend our staff, instead of what it seems to be is just accepting, that everyone's open for criticism if you work for the council.
It's maybe not to badge it up as a council, but to badge it up as a service. I remember one report we had years ago, and people were asked, what do you think of education? Oh, it's brilliant. What do you think of social work? They're doing a wonderful job, etc. What do you think of the council? Oh, they're terrible. And there seems to be this, everybody thinks we do a good job in the various services, but when you lump it together as a big council, everybody has a bit kick at the council. So I think, I don't know how we do get a report back to say what we're doing. Ms Meehan?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Certainly, we'll take some action away to have a look at that and bring back some future reporting. The form of that and the timing of that I'll need to have a look at, but certainly it's of such concern to members, and not just from the debate today, that we understand that and potentially look to tie that in with some of the other reporting around workforce as well. But we'll certainly look to bring some reporting back to the appropriate committee.
Thank you.
And Councillor Carruthers.
Thanks so much, Chair. I think that's a good point to raise. I think we've got about 6,500 employees, and if you ask 6,450 of them what the council is, it'll not reflect the actual 43 elected members, and I think that's the point that Councillor Wilson was picking up, and it is the 43 elected members are the legal definition of the council. Going back to the performance indicators in regards to exit interviews, so I was really interested in regards to that. So how that reflects back, so I know it'll be going forward, but how far back does it? It's a time scale, and so I imagine you've got somebody might resign, somebody might be dismissed, or somebody might retire in general terms. It's probably the three main reasons why somebody would leave the council. So I just wonder how far does that go back? Does that cover this year? Will we see them performance indicators coming through? And information I'm really keen to see is when somebody leaves, is it as they leave? Is it before they leave? Is it after they leave? The timeline's involved, so I'm quite keen to hear that information. Thank you.
Ms Jewett.
Thank you, Chair. It's really good that you've brought that up, Councillor, because I think it was after we were here last year, through yourselves as a committee or previous name committee and our joint trade union colleagues, we would extend that period. I think it's recognised with our trauma-informed approach that not everybody would be able to do an exit interview before they go or straight after they go, so that process has been extended. But I think what we need to do is continue to create the culture of openness and transparency and enabling these conversations before you get to the point of leaving. I think we all know if you've been in a previous organisation, you've got to the point where you've applied for another job, an exit interview at that point might not change your mind, but our checking process and that regular strength-based conversation would hopefully bring up to the forefront anything before that. I think you've all recognised in this committee, I will only get to see those forms as the Workforce Engagement Manager when it's something pretty significant on it. I would also welcome seeing the good bits as well. We've got amazing practice out there, and it's to share that so that we can highlight that and help other services where it's maybe not as easy to practice like that. They might be customer-facing manual services compared to maybe professional or paraprofessional services. So I think this is an ongoing thing for me because it's part of the culture change and part of the employee experience. And I think as our councillors have shown, it is about perception, but it's about hearing all lived and living experience from the council. So I want to continue to work with joint trade union colleagues about how we look at that. But it's not an organisational development process. It's just we would like the feedback, the qualitative and the quantitative feedback that comes from that. We need to help our leaders across the council just become more natural at having those strength-based conversations prior to the exit of an employee. Thank you.
Follow up.
Yeah, so keen to see the performance indicators and the hard facts in real terms over the last year, 24 to 25. Will we see them?
Yeah, we have it through yourself, Chair. It's service business plan, so it will come to this committee as part of that.
Excellent, thank you for that, Chair. Thank you, thanks. Jamie.
Right, with that, I've no further hands up. Members are asked to agree the People Experience Framework to measure and evaluate organisational success across our council as detailed in the appendix, and to receive annual updates in measurement of success with the People Strategy 2021 to 2026 update. I'm happy to agree 1 and 2, and we've got that action to bring back a report on how we deal with Facebook warriors. There are other social medias available, but that's the only one I sort of follow. Move on to item 9, establishing an ad hoc Crichton Trust subcommittee. Members are asked to agree arrangements to establish an ad hoc subcommittee of this service committee to review the Crichton Trust's progress and achievement of its financial recovery plan, as agreed at our last meeting. Mr Evans is here to assist if members have any questions. Over to members. Everybody, oh, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, it was just, so is this a re-instantiation of what stopped happening before, or is it basically a new ad hoc version? It's just kind of, because I think some members kind of wondered why the old one kind of fell away. Was it just a sort of decision to do with committee delegations and structures? Because I think that sort of got lost in the mist of time a wee bit. So it was just, is this a what do you call it, a reanimation, or is it a new thing altogether? Thank you.
Ms Meehan.
So the ad hoc sub that's proposed is based on the decision members took at the February committee. It is not a replication of the previous Creighton subcommittee, which had a much broader remit. Because this is an ad hoc sub of this committee, it needs to sit within the delegations of this committee. But members also, I think, through the convener in that debate, and it was agreed, there is a report going to go forward to the ROSO initially to look at the development of a standing subcommittee for the Crichton, which may have a wider remit than is proposed here. So this was, members were keen that there was momentum continued around the decision that was taken at the last meeting. So this is really about us fulfilling that and anticipate, subject to member decision, that might be overtaking Councillor Thompson. But obviously that wider remit would be something members would want to consider, and colleagues will be bringing that report forward to ROSO.
Councillor Crothers.
Thanks very much. Yeah, just to support the comments of Councillor Thompson, but in particular regards to, I think a lot of members have been, I think we'll let that previous committee disband, and it was missed, and keen to see some kind of committee come back. So there's, I think, full and proper oversight and I would say, again, scrutiny by the elected members from the council. So keen to see that come back in some format. Thank you.
I think one of the things we need to sort of have a look at is the arrangements for the ad hoc sub. And it seems to be the sort of constitution of the committee, 7 or 11 members. Councillor Dorward.
I did try using the electronic media to get my it's there. Thanks, Chair, for allowing me to come in. From a Labour Group perspective, we agree that the interim proposals are absolutely essential to form a subcommittee from this committee, and we propose 11 members in the first instance to provide proper scrutiny on the financial position recovery plan, and also agree with the recommendations at 2.2 to move forward to establish a standing subcommittee from full council is absolutely essential. One of the things, the question that we have was it discussed at the last meeting was elected membership on the Crichton Trust board. This hasn't been, it's not part of this paper, and could we have a report or something, or a discussion about that going forward? Maybe not this specific on this specific report, but could we have a discussion about this going forward, because it was raised at the last meeting. Thank you.
Just wondering, is that one for here or one for full council? And is there any progress on the request from the last meeting?
So to pick that point up, Councillor Dorburn will certainly make arrangements. It wouldn't be for this committee to consider that, but we would certainly bring forward to the appropriate committee if that's what members wish.
Councillor Thompson.
So, I mean, I would probably suggest that it's in the hands of members, but obviously for this committee, subcommittee, if it's an ad hoc subcommittee, if this one in the meantime, I would propose that we have 7 members.
Councillor Slater.
Yes, Chair, I would agree, just 7 members. I think that's sufficient. Thank you.
Councillor Crothers.
Thank you. So I'm not looking to upset the apple cart or anything. I'm just trying to get clarification. So if it sounds like what we're really doing is that setting up in the short term an ad hoc subcommittee, then from this committee, then review standing orders committee, I'll look at the meeting grave of that, then it'll then throw up a proposal to the full council. What's the difference in timelines being established? I mean, how an ad hoc subcommittee to a full subcommittee of the full council? What's the difference in timeline? Is the point of, probably is what I'm trying to get the grasp of, is there a point of setting up an ad hoc in the short term if we've got to make a decision of full council?
Well, I think it was a suggestion by myself. If we do ad hoc, we can set it up and we can get up and running. Whereas if it's Rosso, it's to go through Rosso, then it's to go to full council and be set up through full council. So this was to allow us to look at the financial recovery plan and to make sure that we are happy and they're meeting their targets. I think the other one was the one that really gets into where they're going and their sort of strategic direction and etc. But that would come through Rosso as to what the remit for that committee would be. Councillor Crothers.
No, thanks so much for that answer. So I'm taking it 6 to 9 months it probably would take to set up the full subcommittee, go through the proper processes that we have in place. So happy to, and still keen to support the short term. Thank you.
Councillor Dorward.
Thanks, Chair, for allowing me to come back in. I'm still proposing 11 members, given that we are looking at the Crichton Trust finances. I think 11 is better than 7 in that instance in terms of scrutiny. That's a Labour Group proposal from that perspective. And I think, as you said, absolutely essential that we have this ad hoc subcommittee until we decide on a full committee. The Crichton estate is a massive asset, not just to Dumfries, but to Dumfries and Galloway. And it would be remiss of us not to have a subcommittee in the interim until we decide on whether or not we have a full, it'd be remiss of us not to have an ad hoc subcommittee, until we make a decision at full council regarding a subcommittee and or membership of the board. Thank you.
Councillor Crothers.
It was that exact point, apologies for coming in again, but that stimulated my question, my previous question, because it was put forward as 7, and there's probably a bit of a conflict with 11. It's what I heard then, because I was thinking if it goes to full council, it really needs to be 11. But an ad hoc of this committee, half the membership, probably would suit better 7. So I'll just leave my thoughts there, but I did think that 7 for here, but if it goes to full council, it needs to be 11 if there's a different committee set up.
I think if we go to 7, some of the groups might not get a seat on the subcommittee. If we go to 11, I think everyone is guaranteed a seat if they wish to take it up. It might be better just to go to the 11 to allow everybody the opportunity to sit on it if they wish. Whether we get 11 members or not, some people might not want to sit in it at this stage, but there's a chance that it could happen. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, no, I mean, if that's the wish of the committee, then happy to go with that. But I just thought in the interim ad hoc, be quick, get 7 up and running, but appreciate that there's other views, and if everybody's going to be represented, then I'll expect to see 11 members turn up for the first meeting. Thank you.
With that, members happy with the 11? Yeah. So members are asked to consider and agree the arrangements to establish an ad hoc Crichton Trust subcommittee of Enabling Customer Services Committee set out in section 4.2, and that would be with 11 members. And note that a report on proposals to establish a standing subcommittee of full council with a wider remit and delegations in regard to its relationship and interests with the Crichton Trust will be brought to a future meeting of the Review of Standing Orders subcommittee. And we have to consider, agree and note. Yep. All right. I have no other business. Can I thank you all for your attendance?